Hello and a warm welcome to Security Scan, your weekly show that gets you updated with the security concerns surrounding India. I'm Neelu, Vyas. On the show today, we are going to talk about the unrest in Pakistan, especially in the Sindh and Balochistan province. People of both these provinces have accused the Pakistan government of repressing the political voice of dissent, resulting in mass enforced disappearances, targeted killings, forced conversion to Islam of Hindu girls, and brutal sectarian violence targeting the Sufi shrines and places of worship of religious minorities. There have been demands of the UN intervention to stop Pakistan from using terrorist outfits in Sindh and Balochistan against secular nationalist organizations. So why is this war crime being perpetrated? Who are the stakeholders? And how does it impact India on the global table? Joining me now, Vivek, Katju, former ambassador. I welcome him. Next to him is Jayadeva, Ranade, former additional secretary, RAW. Next to him is Prasad, associate editor, The Tribune. I welcome them all. And also joining us on the phone line very shortly will be Yusufzai. He's a journalist from Peshawar. I welcome all of you on the program. And I would like to start from you, Mr. Katju, that given the fact that elections are around the corner, and we've seen heat building on these issues time and again. What was the recent provocation of the unrest which happened in Sindh and Balochistan?
Look, let us understand that the causes of the unrest in both these provinces are very deep. They manifest themselves from time to time. But because these causes have never been addressed, they will continue to be manifested. And this is one occasion. The elections are there, and the religious groups, the terrorists, are terrorizing all persuasions who don't subscribe to their ideologies or their theologies.
Okay.
But let me spend just 1 minute on the causes, on the deep causes of the unrest.
Right.
There is a feeling in Pakistan, in the what are called the smaller provinces, Sindh, Balochistan, to an extent even Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that the Pakistan state at the end of the day is a Punjabi state.
Okay.
Punjab looms so large over Pakistan's polity, society, economy, and it does not hesitate to pursue its interests at the cost of both Balochistan and Sindh.
Okay.
That is why in both these provinces there are deep resentments and there are separatist tendencies that go to the very beginning of Pakistan.
Right.
In Balochistan, it goes back to the merger, the way the Pakistanis pursued the merger of Kalat state.
Mm-hmm.
In Sindh, it goes back to the time when there was a large influx of people, Muhajirs for instance, who changed the entire character of Sindh, and that has been exacerbated after the Afghan wars or the Afghan troubles with the very large influx of Pathans or Pashtuns.
And none of the regimes, whoever have ruled Pakistan, have had the political will to address these issues.
No, no. On the contrary, I think the army and to an extent the civilian leadership have always pursued the interests of Punjab.
Okay.
And one last point, that is why, say on the waters issue, Pakistan is not able to address it successfully because the other provinces deeply resent any plans to create large reservoirs upriver, up the Indus, because they feel that then they will be completely deprived of water.
Right. You made a fair point, and before I come to Mr. Ranade, I'm told that we are connected now from Peshawar. Rahimullah Yusufzai is joining us. I welcome you on Security Scam. And Rahimullah, if I could ask you, and what Mr. Vivek Katju just has said, that none of the regimes have tried to address the issue, and the major cause of concern has been the dominance of the Punjabi culture. What, according to you, has really gone wrong with Sindh and Balochistan? Why the problem has not been addressed so far?
I think Balochistan is a more serious problem than Sindh. Sindh, I think, is now becoming stable. There were problems in urban Sindh, in places like Karachi, Hyderabad, and Mirpur Khas because of the Urdu-speaking Muhajirs,
Right.
and their party, the MQM. But I think MQM has now been divided into, say, 3 or 4 factions, and the party has become weak. So it has opened opportunity for other parties to try to fill the vacuum. I think, Balochistan remains a trouble spot. There
Okay.
are, militant groups operating there, and they are demanding their rights. They also want a separate homeland. That is the real issue now. There have been military operations, and that actually has displaced people, and also, younger people. Not all of them, but some of them are very angry.
Right.
But I think that, even then, despite all these problems, elections are regularly held in Balochistan. The majority of people who are elected, they are pro-Pakistan, pro-Federation. I don't discount that there are problems. There are still problems.
Right.
And maybe because of the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, when more development, comes in and more jobs are created, there will be a growing fear among the Baloch that they will be converted into a minority in their own home province. That fear is there. But I think that, the creation of jobs, business opportunities, and the fact that, a large number of people are taking part in the election,
Right.
that is something which is very positive as far as Pakistan is concerned.
Right.
So
But
I
Rahimullah, as you
expect
said
these
that,
problems
Rahimullah, you just
of
said,
militancy in Balochistan.
right. You just said that a lot of people are participating in elections. That, of course, is a very healthy sign for the democracy. But I would like to understand from you that what was a recent reason for provocation? Why the situation is really bad? Is election the reason? Is interference by China the reason? How do you see this internal problem of Pakistan really internationalizing in a big way? What is the main reason for that?
The Baloch separatists actually are launching attacks on the projects which are being executed under CPEC. And that's why there have been attacks against Chinese workers and also against the projects. But these attacks are isolated incidents, few and far between, because, many projects are on the ground. Many Chinese, we have almost 60,000 Chinese now working in Pakistan. So by and large, it's not that serious, the problem. But the problem is there. I still say that, there are issues which, which must be resolved. More attention should be given to Balochistan. The militants are saying they will not take part in the elections. They are trying to tell people to boycott the polls. I think the turnout will be low in certain areas where militancy is strong. The same was true in 2013 election, including, one of the members. Right. He was elected as a member of the Provincial Assembly with only 500 votes. And that guy then became the chief minister, in the province with such a low number of votes. So there will be issues of low turnout. There may be some violence because there will be more targets now with people addressing public meetings.
Right.
And the polling stations could be targeted. This will happen. But I think the elections will still proceed. And I don't expect that, they will be able to disrupt the elections to a large extent.
I will interrupt you here, Mr. Rahimullah. We have Vivek Katju here with us in the studio. He has a question for you. Just listen into what he has to say, and then I'll go to the other panelists.
Rahimullah bhai, first of all, Eid aa rahi hai, Eid Mubarak. And let me ask you, why hasn't the Pakistan state and the Pakistan army been able to successfully address the deep resentments, even if in some groups they don't go to the extent of asking for separate state in Balochistan? Is it lack of seriousness on the part of both Islamabad and Rawalpindi?
I think you are, correct to some extent, there has been less attention to these underdeveloped areas, not only Balochistan, but also the federally administered tribal areas which have now been merged into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Also, in southern Punjab, the Saraiki belt, these areas have lagged far behind rest of Pakistan. And as you said earlier, Punjab is very dominant, So that is the reason that, whoever wins Punjab in the election wins Pakistan. So that, is true. All three provinces together, Balochistan, Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa,
Right. So,
they don't have that number of seats as Punjab.
Right.
So there are issues, I think because of the security situation, the military has a dominant role concerning the issues in Balochistan, and the focus, always shifts in Pakistan. We have so many problems which emerge.
Right.
So there is no focused attention on the issues faced by the Baloch people. And that's why there is resentment. Now a major effort is underway. Development, political participation, all these things are being done, but maybe we are a bit late.
Okay.
Too late and too little. Maybe that could be the answer.
Too little, too late. Rahimullah, you just hold on your thoughts. We'll come back to you again. And I'm also going to ask you as to what actually is happening in Sindh. But I would like to come to Mr. Ranade. Given the fact that the Baloch nationalist movement has been on for quite some time, and as Mr. Vivek Katju has also pointed out, and Rahimullah was saying that a lot of individual efforts are being made, but nothing is visible on the ground as to what kind of a change is there. Now, there is another question that the Balochis, they are trying to propagate the ethnic loyalty. But when it comes to the Pakistan army, the Pakistan government, they talk about surpassing of the religious, loyalty. Now, how does one distinguish? Now, for people like us in India who are sitting and reading the situation in Balochistan and Sindh, how do we read this entire situation?
I think both of them have, in a way, touched on the real problems that exist in Balochistan.
Right.
And what you said just now about religion playing a role and
religious loyalty versus ethnic loyalty.
As well as ethnic loyalty, they're different layers of actually the same problem.
Okay.
So while Islam does claim that, it's all embracing right across Pakistan, you have a different, a local concept or a provincial concept emerging in the smaller provinces. And in Balochistan, it is particularly pronounced. A reference was made to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
Right.
The nickname for that in Punjab, in Pakistan, is the China-Punjab Economic Corridor. That itself brings out the problem. And I think, as the guest said, there are about 60,000 Chinese already working on these projects in Pakistan. The figures may vary, but that's his figure. And that means that the Chinese continue to bring in their labor to work on these projects.
Right.
There was an assessment done earlier, I think it was by Price Waterhouse, commissioned by the Pakistan government, to project the number of jobs that will become available to Pakistanis through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And their projection was 700,000. Hardly any of that has come through. In fact, I believe the numbers are in the low thousands. So if that is true, then obviously the people are going to feel denied. The second is, in Balochistan, there are two real issues that have come up. One, they are seeing in Gwadar that they have been moved out of Gwadar. That place has been sanitized. There are only Chinese there or there's the army there. So all their fishermen have been moved out. They're quite upset about that. They're also worried, as was mentioned, about becoming a minority inside Balochistan. Now, more Chinese labor, more Pakistan army and more Pakistani labor from other provinces coming there is going to upset them, plus the fact that their land is being taken away. So I think that's the other issue that is coming up, for which there doesn't seem to be any solution really. Right. And the third, I would say, is the, shall I say, the arrogance of the Punjabi towards the others, which is coming up. So I think there's a combination of factors, and because the problem is quite serious, I would suggest that that is one of the reasons why the Chinese have decided to make contact with the Baluchi rebels or the Baluchi militants directly on their own, without going through the Pakistani authorities.
Right.
So I think we are seeing a combination of things happening there, which suggests a long-term problem.
Right. Mr. Prasad, out of all the factors which Mr. Ranade has just pointed out, I'd like to ask you on the interference of China. Now, for example, when China is providing jobs to more than 40,000 people, then obviously there is a clear-cut interference by China. Now, does that become a potential reason for India to act immediately and recognize the problem, that there is a problem and there is a need for India to intervene at this point of time? And maybe elections could be the right time, if you could see it politically.
It's a very difficult kind of a situation. I mean, I don't see a country which in India can intervene in some sovereign country's internal election processes. That's something different. But what you say is something different. What is happening right now, of course, is the problems of Balochistan and the troubles that are going on is very clearly identified. But there is another set of opinion which I just heard from Pakistani nationals very recently. They argue that this is something that there probably is being told to them, that look what Britain did to Hong Kong. It had a territory for 99-year lease. It converted into free port, and today it's back to China. That's one argument they are being said. The fact remains, for all the people in Pakistan, everybody, there has been counter arguments about the Gwadar port, the Hambantota being the nearest example where the Chinese invested a hell of a lot of money and the interests itself could not be kind of serviced. Having said that, for China, it's a very solemn agreement that the Chinese government got from the Pakistani government, and they also got Pakistani army to kind of bring in their support system to ensure that the CPEC is made. India, of course, has a major problem with CPEC itself. The very fact that very recently at Shanghai, we were not the only country which outside the SCO stood out with the BRI project.
Right.
And China has indicated at times, there has been some unofficial is that's willing to take a relook at the whole thing.
Right.
So I think there are issues that India does face, but how are we going to get into it is another issue. Elections is an internal process. It's an internal issue and the Balochistan issue is a fact. It's for the people of Pakistan and Baloch to address that.
Right.
There are issues there, and we've heard from the Pakistani journalists very clearly that there are issues, but people haven't addressed it. That's where it lies.
Right. But I'd like to go to Rahimullah Yusuf again. You as a journalist, I'm very curious to know that when you are traveling in the regions around Sindh and Balochistan, and especially at the election time, what is actually happening? What we have read is that there are reports of torture, there are reports of killings, women being raped. What is the actual scenario now when you go on the ground? You have, though it said that there have been individual efforts to address this problem, but what actually is happening on the ground? Because when you address a certain political constituency, the scenario is totally different.
You know, if we talk about Sindh first, let me tell you that, the situation is not that bad. There are incidents of rape or, there may be some forced conversion or, local jirgas deciding matters which should go to the court and the police. These things happen. It's basically a tribal society.
Right.
We have problems, but let me tell you,
but
because
Rahimullah, I'll just interrupt you here for a moment. Rahimullah, I'll just interrupt you here. You said that the problem is not so grave in Sindh. But what about the Sindhu Desh movement? Is the media there not acknowledging this fact that there is a demand for a separate state of Sindh, the dominance of Urdu over the Sindhi language, the Sindhi culture? There are issues. Does the media over there acknowledge this?
Yes, it is reported in Pakistan. The media is fairly independent, I must say. Sindhu Desh movement has been reported, and its leadership, their statements are sometimes published. But let me tell you, it's a fringe movement. It does not really have a large presence.
Okay.
There have been some terrorist attacks by this group, mainly targeting the railway tracks. But this group actually is not very important because never taken part in the elections. The Sindhi nationalists, when they take part in the election, who are not separatists, they are Sindhi nationalists, they always, lose elections. I told you, this pro-federation, pro-Pakistan party, Pakistan People's Party, founded by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and then inherited by Benazir Bhutto, and now by her spouse Asif al-Zardari and her son Bilawal.
Right.
This party actually is the most dominant. They have won every election since 1970 in Sindh, and then there are other parties as well. So I think that, I don't deny that there are no problems. We have problems, but it's not as grave as being mentioned, by some. Balochistan, I admit there are more serious problems
Right.
because of the low intensity insurgency. There are several groups, but the fact remains that only one group, its leader, Dr. Allah Nazar Baloch, is still here fighting out, staying put in Balochistan. All the other leaders have gone abroad. They have sought political asylum, mostly in Western countries.
Okay.
And that's why their supporters have been demoralized. Those groups are losing support, whatever support they had.
Right.
So I think, the fact remains that the big majority in Balochistan is taking part in elections. They are part of the, the process. They are represented in the parliament, in the provincial assembly. So I think that, Pakistan should pay more attention to Balochistan. And I
Rather
think
than
that
Sindh.
is a real concern. Otherwise, Sindh is not really a big issue here.
But as a journalist, if I could ask you, because I'm told you have to go, so what is the end game struggle for Balochistan? What is the solution actually? Because if you don't call for an international interference by countries like India or other countries who are trying to recognize that there is a problem in Balochistan, how is the government, the government of Pakistan going to address these issues? Because you yourself as a journalist have said that the government has not made serious efforts to address the issue.
Yes, I think that, we have to empower the people of Balochistan.
Okay.
Balochistan is not only inhabited by the Baloch or the Brahmanis, but also by the Pashtun. Pashtun actually make up more than 40% of the population, and they are 100%, pro-Pakistan. They are not part of the insurgency.
Right.
Even among the Baloch, I told you this is a divided lot. The separatists are split into several groups, and they don't agree with each other. For example, someone will say, we want a separate Balochistan state, others will say we want to include the Baloch from Iran, Afghanistan, and even the Gulf countries to become one country, which is very unrealistic.
Right.
So I think, there's no real unity among the separators. That's
So
why
there have
they're
been
very weak.
unrealistic demands, but how the political parties are going to meet the aspirations of the people, how they're going to meet the demands, that would be something interesting to watch. I thank you so much, Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai, for joining us here on the program of Security Scan. We'll look for more inputs from you in our future episodes. Okay, Mr. Katju, now coming to the fact that how grave and serious the situation is. India recognizes this as a serious situation. China is trying to fish in the troubled waters, providing jobs, also seeking an economic opportunity by forming an alliance and forming the Chinese economic corridor. How compulsive is the situation for India at the moment to act and intervene on Balochistan? Because we have seen Prime Minister Narendra Modi making a mention of Balochistan earlier as well.
No, but let's be very clear. He made a mention of Balochistan in the context of human rights of Balochis.
Okay.
We have never, to the best of my knowledge, said that Balochistan should be separated. We recognize, as far as I know, that Balochistan is a part of Pakistan, but we do say that the Pakistanis should respect human rights of the Balochis, which are being violated shamelessly. There are missing persons, there are disappearances, as you yourself have said.
Yeah.
The Pakistan courts have been very forceful in calling upon the army to refrain from its practices. Not that the courts have succeeded, but they've tried. So, what we have really tried to convey to the Pakistanis is that they, with their human rights record in Balochistan as well as in Sindh, have no business to point fingers elsewhere. Their record of human rights in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, everywhere. The Pakistan army is a brutal army.
Right.
It stops at nothing when it comes to reining in people.
Right.
It considers who are against what they say is the ideology of
Right.
Pakistan.
Right.
So that is there, but I agree with the idea that the elections in Pakistan are their own affair, and that it is not for us to intervene in that process of their elections. Yes, we've got to be cognizant that there are separatist tendencies that are arising in Pakistan, and it is for Pakistan to deal with these separatist tendencies.
Right.
It is not for us to provide stability to Pakistan.
Right.
I think the idea that we somehow should take a positive look at Pakistan's stability is mistaken. To my mind, it is for Pakistan. If Pakistan pursues policies that will destabilize it, well, we'll have a destabilized Pakistan. But we have done nothing to intervene in that in the process of Pakistan's internal affairs, and
Right.
and we should, I think, continue as of now, and I repeat, as of now, to pursue this policy.
But given the fact that the Baloch nationalist movements and the parties which are involved, they are already registered under UNPO, and they are trying to form a network. They've held protests in countries like UK and elsewhere. They're trying to make the matter heard, at least internationally. So does that mean that when bodies like these invoke some kind of an intervention from some countries or the other, does that become imperative for a particular country A or B to act on it? Like, for example, Mr. Katju said that it's not it's Pakistan's own problem. They're supposed to solve it themselves. So, but what about other countries?
We can be critical of their human rights, and we
Right.
can say that these people have a just cause.
Right. But we can we not have an official line on Balochistan, like we have been hearing time and again that on human rights people have spelt their opinion. But can we have an official line on Balochistan, given the fact that the stakes which China also has, and how do we perceive it diplomatically then?
Well, there are two tracks here that I think need to be followed. First is your reference to UNPO.
Okay.
There are many outfits which are part of UNPO and which keep raising the issue on the sidelines of UN meetings, etc., or human rights meetings. And I think that could continue. In any case, we have no control on it. But as far as Pakistan's human rights atrocities in Balochistan and other places concerned, certainly human rights organizations should raise it. They should continue to raise it.
Okay.
And I think our own human rights organization should play an active role in that. That is my thing, not beyond that.
Right.
As a state, I don't think we should get involved.
Okay.
But there are 2 points that I'd like to make here. One is, you did refer to the Chinese creating jobs in Pakistan. I would suggest that those jobs are extremely limited in number. As I said, they're in the very, very low thousands. The bulk of the jobs go to Chinese workers, Chinese labor who is brought in from China to work on those jobs. And that has added to the problem, because the Balochis apprehend that they are going to be totally sidelined and marginalized.
Right.
The second is the China-Pakistan economic corridor is actually backed by the Pakistan army, by the Pakistan Foreign Affairs establishment, and by the ruling
Right.
political parties. The others, in fact, going by Pakistani press, are quite against it. Their economists, etc., and they already have done their calculations
Right.
that they cannot repay the interest.
Right.
So this is a long-term problem.
Right.
And if we look at the way that the Chinese have gone and settled illegally in other countries, I think it is an alarming
It's an
thing,
alarming
because, for
situation.
example, in Africa, their numbers already hit 1 million
Right.
who have illegally settled down there. So what is there to stop them here?
So, Mr. Prasad, so it's a clear mix of a political problem, an economic problem. Diplomatically, also all countries are seeing in their own way. So, what is one big solution, if you can offer right now, before I close the program?
I'm nobody to offer a solution, but we all definitely hope that the people of Balochistan get the justice they're looking for.
Okay.
That's one thing. They're appealing. The fact that they're appealing to international organizations to kind of see that they are justly treated by their own government, and by flagging these issues at international events, as Mr. Ranade had pointed out, this whole idea is to make sure, build some international pressure to ensure that they and their ill get justice and a fair play in the country they're saying.
Okay. I would have come to you, Mr.
One
Katju.
sentence.
Yes.
We should have no reluctance in giving asylum to the people in Balochistan who are truly persecuted.
Okay, okay, okay. So it's very clear that there is unrest in Sindh and Balochistan, and people in large numbers here have been suffering. Why Pakistan does not want to acknowledge the problem is purely political, less diplomatic, I think. But what the international community and countries like India can do to resolve this issue, something to be watched out for, and will surely become the focus of further discussions as well. I thank all my guests, Mr. Vivek, Katju, Mr. Ranade, Mr. K.V. Prasad. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. Goodbye and thanks for watching.